Yes, ma'am.
Shall I start?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Good evening, Suswagatam, Namaskar, Namaskar, greetings of the day to one and all. On behalf of ELTAI India, let me first of all extend a hearty welcome to our resource person, Meri Maroutian, a Delta qualified teacher from Italy. Let me also welcome the moderator, Dr. S. Sankarakumar, our enthusiastic executive members, donor members, life members, and short-term ELTAI members and delegates, both teachers and learners. ELTAI India was founded in 1965 in Chennai and has over 52 chapters spread all over India. ELTAI organizes annual conferences, teacher development programs, workshops, online discussion forums, and competitions for teachers and learners, publishes research journals, and provides funding for action research projects. It has created a place for itself globally by signing 11 MOUs with teacher associations in various countries and has for long been an associate of IATEFL UK and affiliate of TESOL USA. In an age when everyone is immersed in visual pleasures, ELTAI has reinforced that reading is the mother of all skills and aims to highlight the pleasures and benefits of reading by launching a movement called India Reading. And I'll speak about it more after the introductory video. ELTAI continues its journey of upskilling teachers and learners with its series of webinars. And we are proud to inform that this is ELTAI's 110th webinar. In the current scenario of skill building, life skills are an integral aspect of education at all levels. Today, our resource person, Meri Maroutian, will take us on a 1-hour audio-visual session and enlighten us on the topic, Life Skills in the Classroom and Beyond, Guidelines for Educators. Before that, let me screen the introductory video of ELTAI. I think Joseph, sir, please help me with the video. Joseph, sir.
One second.
Yeah. After that introductory video of ELTAI, let me elaborate on the India Reads movement, which is an ELTAI venture. All of us will agree that today's generation is caught in the trap of visual pleasures, and the culture of reading seems to be either lost, or even if the generation is reading, they are merely flipping through the text. With the firm belief that reading is the mother of all skills and a vital aspect in inculcating 21st century skills, especially the 4 C's: creativity, critical thinking skills, collaboration, and communication, ELTAI has taken positive steps by establishing the India Reads movement. The objectives of the Reading Club established for India Reads movement is to create a love for reading so that students can become lifelong readers, to enable them to reflect on their reading and become effective writers and speakers, to make them familiar with genres and engage themselves with apt reading strategies, and to use both synchronous and asynchronous modes for sustaining the interest of the readers. In view of the National Education Policy 2020, ELTAI, while keeping its focus on English, will also encourage reading in Indian languages. That was about the India Reads movement. Now let me quickly introduce the moderator of today's session, Dr. Sankarakumar, who's an assistant professor in PSG College of Technology, Coimbatore. With MPhil and PhD in English language teaching, he has 22 years of experience in English language teaching, task-based language teaching, web skills, language assessment, student management, and administration in engineering education. He has received the e-teacher scholarship twice from US Embassy, New Delhi, for doing a 10-week online course on web skills and language assessment in India with University of Oregon, USA. A recipient of international certification for teachers and trainers, professional level with distinction from Cambridge ESOL examinations, University of Cambridge, and Wipro Mission 10X Bangalore in May 2011, an international certification for high impact teaching skills from Dale Carnegie Training Institute and Wipro Mission 10X Bangalore in March 2011. He is a teacher educator at ELTAI for virtual learning programs. He is also secretary of ELTAI Coimbatore chapter, a British Council certified train the trainer for IELTS and VEC programs, and has been selected as a presenter by Cambridge University Press, Chennai, to present Cambridge English programs. He has published 15 papers and delivered 50 plus lectures at regional, state, and national level conferences and seminars, and attended 80 programs on ELT, teaching learning process, curriculum development, web tools, educational leadership, and entrepreneurship. May I request Dr. Sankarakumar to take charge and moderate the session? Sankarakumar, sir, over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, ma'am. It's my pleasure to be associated with ELTAI webinar, and I, on behalf of English Language Teachers Association of India, welcome all the participants and the resource person for today's webinar on life skills in classroom and beyond, a guideline for educators. It's my pleasure to introduce the speaker for today's session, Meri Maroutian, who is a Delta certified teacher based in Parma, Italy, with an MA in Language and Cultural Studies from the University of Modena and Reggio. She currently works full-time at an international school as an L2 English teacher in primary circle. Having lived and studied mostly in Malaysia, America, and Italy, she has become aware of the social injustices reserved for those who are forever perceived as foreigners or non-native speakers of any given language. Meri's mission is to dismantle prejudice and bias in education, especially when it comes to non-native English speakers and the teachers being denied work opportunities across the globe. She manages the Instagram page called The Non-Native Speaker, where she shares thoughts on the topic of native speakerism and is currently conducting live interviews that are streamed live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook with ELT professionals. Find out more at www.thenonnativespeaker.com. We are very happy to invite you, Ms. Meri, to be the speaker for today's session, and the session is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction. It's my pleasure to be here. I'll start the presentation and talk a little bit more about myself before I start so that it is clear to everyone what background I come from in order to understand how much I know as well on this session, because as far as we know it, we often talk about life skills and soft skills. We'll use a lot of this terminology, which sometimes kind of intertwine themselves. And I would like to, tell you more about the background I have and how I have also been appointed this role in my current school that I'm working for to discover more on these practices. So to introduce it, to, just a disclaimer for this, even the documentation that I'm going to present today and the documentation that I have myself consulted in order to bring this session to life here today is a conceptual framework. So it is a framework, but nothing is defined as per se. So it is something that always can be implemented in a variety of sectors, fields, cycles within different age groups. And we'll be looking into a bit more about how we should think about life skills in the classroom, basically. So I'll start the presentation and go step by step with you on this. And my talk will be divided into two parts, which are the following. Let me start the presentation 1 second and we'll begin. Okay, I am a non-native speaker. I'm Armenian. I was born in and have begun my studies in Italy at the age of 13. Before that, I've lived all around the world. I say that, with care because it's very deviating sometimes to say I've lived everywhere. But as a young child, I traveled with my parents and I've lived in Moscow, Buenos Aires, Kuala Lumpur, in Bangkok, in San Diego. So I've seen a lot. And the idea of being an advocate for non-native English speakers around the globe I think is very important because I myself don't have a first language I can call my own. I have certified my proficiency level in many languages, but Armenian is not one of them, as I'm still quite illiterate in my own language. So I really care to bring this message and awareness that qualification is much more important than being born in the right country or having gone through your entire life learning in a specific country. But we'll talk more about that as I, tell you more about this life skills in the classroom and beyond. So the concept of life skills. So we're going to clarify what are life skills and how does one go about teaching them. These are areas that we're going to look at because specifically within this document, we're going to look at three areas, personal, social, and learning to learn areas. And then in the second part, we're going to talk about more about the strategies and how the framework and the documentation provides for ideas of strategies that can be implemented in the classroom. And then I'm going to give you some examples of how I've used it. Now, I've been working in an international school on and off for 4 years, and I have had the opportunity to work in the secondary cycle as an L1 teacher and in the primary cycle as both an L1, so a class teacher, and as an L2 teacher, which is the role that I currently hold. And I was appointed to speak about this document, which is still in the making. I say it's still in the making, and this is the document I'm talking about, Life Comp, because it is something that needs to be still developed. There are things that this document specifically mentions, but it's still not totally how to put it, the suggestions that it makes have not yet been put into practice. And some of the materials it mentions have not been developed yet, but are currently in the process. So this is the official document that I will be referring to across my presentation. And it has been issued by the European Commission as guidelines to nurture each of the 9 personal, social, and learning to learn competencies described in this document, LifeComp. And in May 2018, the European Council adopted an updated recommendation on key competencies for lifelong learning to further promote the development of key competencies in the European Union. Now, whether or not these are, specifically oriented towards the European Union or not, I think is debatable, because I feel that this can be used within any field, any sector, and also maybe sometimes with our adult learners as well. So the revised document emphasized the purpose of key competencies by stating that in a rapidly changing and highly interconnected world, each person will need a wide range of skills and competencies to develop them continually throughout life. And therefore, this is something seen as a lifelong competence building that as educators, we must try to promote and take care that it is observed, let's put it this way. So the document in itself, it gives us guidelines as to how to promote life skills. And we will now look at what areas and what is the specific competence within each of these 3 areas. And it is structured in a way that it gives us ideas as to how we need to set the scene in order to develop these areas. So setting the scene would be the first. I'm going to show you how I have developed this, this framework in a more of a horizontal and more, in my opinion, an easier to use guide, which is a bit more user-friendly, in my opinion. And then I will also, when we do the second part and we talk about the implementation of it, I will show you how these areas have been used specifically and how they have been developed throughout. So you'll also get a practical idea of how they work. It's a very intricate document, but once it's seen in practice, you will see that it's not as complicated as it might seem on paper. So we start with setting the scene, so proposals as to how to introduce, how to start a lesson, even for teachers in their very beginning who might not have had as much teaching experience. Then 3, 2, 1 action. Then we've got the promoting learning from experience. So how do we go about, what is the modeling we have to do as teachers to promote learning from experience for our students? Going digital, how we can use these areas or these lessons and make them available digitally, since, as you were mentioning in your introductory video, a lot of students are very much visual learners, auditive learners, but they're quite, going towards the direction of being very dependent on screen use and trying to, collate their notes in a virtual format in other spaces. So things that might also help to guide them in that part, in that area. So the part I will be talking about are the guidelines for educators to nurture each of these 9 competencies described in the document. So for each competence, the guidelines cover the setting and the scene, which we will call preparation. The 3, 2, 1 action is more of the reflection stage, and the third part, promoting learning from experience, is more the part where we will be describing what is exactly happening in our students' minds when we go about this. I will not be focusing on drivers and barriers at this stage, because obviously each of the strategies adopted to teach specific life skills will have a pro and con, just like with any lesson, and it might not suit our entire audience, but it should be suitable for the majority. So the document itself highlights what could be, for each of these, for each of the contents that it proposes, what could be something negative and positives, but we will not be looking into that today since we don't have as much time. So I want to reflect on this quote by Margaret Mead, which also the document mentions. And she says, children must be taught how to think, not what to think. I believe that no lesson, even as per se, without having even without even having to look at this document, all lessons already have life skills entailed in them. So you might not learn anything new, but definitely will learn more strategies and be better equipped to introduce life skills in a more deliberate way into your teaching sessions, no matter if you are an L1 teacher, L2 teacher, L3 teacher. It will make sense by the end of the session, hopefully. So do our lessons already have a focus on life skills? They definitely do. Whether explicitly or implicitly, we all use these techniques to teach our students these competencies. We might not be very well aware of this. However, what we need to make sure is that we make them more explicit for our students, that they know that they are actually working in these areas. So this is the kind of a tree structure that the document mentions, where we have the personal area in the dark green, the social area in the light green, and then the blue area, which is the area which is learning how to learn. I'm only going to talk about these three, so I've chosen P1, self-regulation, S2, which is communication, and L3, managing learning, to just look at how we can implement and look into this, hone in on them, and have some examples of how it is used in the classroom. Please, if you have any questions at any stage, write them down and I will later refer to your questions. I might be going too slow or too fast, but as long as you make your notes, I'm happy to answer any of your questions. So when we think about self-regulation, awareness and management of emotions, thoughts, and behavior. Isn't it strange that we have to overtly address these areas in the classroom? Normally, as I am from 1986, born in 1986, I didn't have any teacher teach me this deliberately or explicitly. But I feel that in today's classrooms, it is very important to make sure that our students are benefiting from all these things. And maybe these are aspects that may be lacking in their personal lives. And so teaching them to self-regulate, even though it seems like something that should be addressed outside, and I would definitely agree that it should. Some students, especially with a variety and range backgrounds that sometimes present themselves in our classrooms, we need to be sure that they have been equipped with the right tools to manage this themselves. So how do we go about it? So in terms of setting the scene, create opportunities to reflect, recognize and label their emotions by building a rich vocabulary. Some of our students don't know how to express themselves in a way that is informative to us. So if we're creating opportunities for reflection and enriching them with the right type of vocabulary, they can then speak about their experience or their feelings in a more detailed way, and we will know exactly how it is that we can help them. So the document suggests mood-related check-ins, which are individual to learners. In the primary school, this might come in a form of we've seen this also on social media or on some YouTube videos where the classroom teacher will have kind of emotions labeled visually just in front of the door, and the children would either tap one or the other, or just kind of say they would choose the way that they would like to be greeted that day. So it's not, especially in an L2 classroom where maybe the students' English is not or whatever language that is that they're learning may not come as naturally to them. Visual aids really help them communicate and express how they might be feeling inside. Even if they don't possess a rich vocabulary, they can let us know how it is that they're feeling, because obviously their emotions carry on to their academic results as well. So we have to pay attention to those. So learning diaries are something that, what they can be keeping every day, mood trackers for learners to use personally. And we can take it to the digital area when we're thinking about, mood tracking apps. This is obviously for older students, and reflect how each online platform and setting affects their feelings, emotions, and specific behaviors. Again, I don't know what settings you come from, but I feel that these can be, and the document also, it kind of implies that this could be used with any age group as long as it's adapted so that it is suitable to a specific student's needs. Then in the social area, so if we look at the other sectors are empathy, communication, and collaboration, and I've chose to focus on communication. It says use of relevant communication strategies, domain-specific codes and tools, depending on the context and content. So how does one go about this? By reinforcing active listening, by encouraging learners to ask clarifying questions or co-created rules for respectful communication in the classroom, you are already giving them that right space that allows for better communication amongst themselves. I've decided to focus on this specific part because I feel that communication, I have a bachelor's degree in communication studies, is the aspect that I find most crucial, and the part that even as adults it's very hard to develop to a level that is beneficial and to a level that we are very good communicators. So for instance, if the presentations are to be held on the same topic, students have to, even before starting their presentation, they have to think of the audience. They have to think of how that audience will perceive them, how the communicative act is going to get across their audience. And so they have to find ways to make their communicative process more effective with a clear goal in mind. And in order to do this, they're going to be, let's go into the evaluation part, right? Co-create assessments on communication within teams by objectives. So when one of the students is giving a presentation, for instance, the others have sort of created a kind of a rubric that is a checklist maybe, and they can talk about whether some objectives have been sometimes met, if some objectives have been usually met or mostly met, and create it as a safe space for communicating even to their peers in the right way, without offending, without judging, but making it into a very inclusive experience. If you look at it going digital, so there is the differentiation between it being something that you can do online versus in person. And we can also make this into another learning feature and discuss about, safe and responsible ways that they could be using social media for communicative purposes. And students really do these presentations also through a digital platform, as long as they know netiquette and the correct use of these resources, then it is totally fine. I will come back to this because I did a specific lesson where everyone had to upload their researches and findings in literature in the secondary school, and they did this online, and it was really nice. So stay tuned to hear more about that when we go into the implementation mode. So other two examples of using this, reinforcing communication, which is a life skill, and making it work in the classroom. So in the primary, there could be just as simple as laying down the ground rules for children. So to speak clearly, ask questions, show interest, could be already reinforcing this, the social area. Or in the secondary, learner-generated models, which is what I did. So teacher highlight examples of unprompted effective communication strategy used in the classroom. And simply by then getting them to generate other models of good communication, they're more, reflective about this process and how it is to come about. Finally, from the third area, which is the learning to learn area, the other two are growth mindset and critical thinking, which are very, very important. Critical thinking, which I sometimes think of as common sense sometimes, because, you know, we have made it, and this is a personal opinion of mine, that we have made it very complex sometimes, but we do need to teach common sense, critical thinking to our students, because in an era when we are bombarded by you know, messages, media, they need to focus on really their interpretation of all the messages that are coming at them. We are exposed to it as well, but having come from a different generation, I think we have maybe more tools to judge and critically think about the everything that is thrown at us, to put it in, you know, in layman's terms. But managing learning, I've decided to focus on that, is something that a lot of students still struggle with, but also adults. The planning and organizing and monitoring of one's learning and reviewing of one's learning. So how do we go about that? Here is a model, right? Share goals and expectations of each lesson. In the international schools, normally we are asked to share the objective of each lesson. I do agree that this is a very good thing, but sometimes if you've studied with the CELTA or Delta course, Cambridge courses for trainee teachers, you learn about how, you know, you could do a guided discovery, or you could do something that is not merely, let's say I'm teaching a lesson on grammar, and I don't want it to sound very grammary, and I don't want to present it like that, because it is not intriguing to learners to know that they're going to be practicing grammar on a specific day. So sometimes, you see, this is a conceptual idea. I would not share the goals and expectations at the beginning of the class, rather maybe at the end of the class. What do you think we have done? What do you think we have learned? You can get feedback from your students and look at it from a different perspective sometimes. So this is not all set in stone, but the document kind of suggests to share your goals and expectations of each lesson or cluster of lessons, which sometimes we call a learning scenario, and make sure that they are measurable. So how do you know if you have succeeded? Or how do you know if your work has been done well? Self-evaluation also plays a big part in managing learning. And I try it sometimes in the classrooms, even today, and what very frequently, I would say. And, you know, normally you could spot those students who are not very self-critical, or they're not very good at self-assessing themselves, and to bring them to that awareness with maybe rubrics that you have created. Have I done this in the correct way? How many corrections have been put in my writing? Do they look back on what the corrections were in their writing? Sometimes students don't do that. So this area, managing a learning area, is very, very important to, I think is the most important personally, because noticing is the key to learning something new. Unless you learn that unless you are aware that there is a learning gap, or there is something that you don't know, or you've been doing differently, and you notice that this was done in a better way, there is no way you can go forward, because it's simply that epiphany just doesn't occur to you otherwise, right? So model your thought process as a teacher before, during, and after the assignment. How am I going to do this? Elicit from them. And if you see that they come up with nothing, then you can slowly go through the procedure one by one and say, as a person learning, okay, you put yourself in a learner's shoes. We have all been learners at one point. How do you go about organizing all the load of information that you're getting? So you model that. You create rubrics, which I just mentioned, and then encourage learners to use learning diaries. Sometimes they prefer to type it out. They want to progress. There are a lot of digital apps that you can use to track this type of progress as well. And we do create, in the international school, we do create portfolios, and some of them are digital, but it takes time to specifically, you know, collate all this information, choose one of the important works from the student to put it there. But at the end of the year, it's really worth the effort, because you can see the progress throughout the school year, and it is very, very beneficial for students as well to see how they have progressed. So this is an example of a self-assessment rubric used at secondary level. I did ask, what do you think it is measuring? So I'll give you like 30 seconds to read through and maybe think of the answer, and I'll give you the answer right now. Just 30 seconds, think about it and read it. So this would be measuring collaboration and communication. If you got it right, you have been following along very well. So this would be a rubric simply that they could self-assess themselves, and then as a teacher, you would know if the communicative or collaborative has actually been achieved. Other questions I would like to invite you to think about are, to what degree do you already implement life skills so far as we've seen in your lessons? And can the explicit inclusion of life competencies help strengthen the curriculum that you are teaching? So think about that. Think of if you could do more or less of one thing or the other to do that. Again, the importance here is to reflect on how explicit are we making this, because it may be, we might intend it, we might think it's common sense, but like I said, common sense is not so common. And so we really need to press hard on these points until they become like second nature also in our students' minds. So think about that, and you'll get back to me in the Q&A. So life coming to action, let's do a quick review. This is a set of recommendations for teaching personal, social, and learning to learn competencies, suggestions on how to create learner-centered environments and implement teaching methods to foster the development of life competencies. So as I was saying, this framework then differentiates. The competencies are self-regulation, flexibility, well-being in the personal area. The competencies in the social area are empathy, communication, collaboration. It's very important that we work on the setting in each of these. Then in life comp, learning to learn area, growth mindset, critical thinking, managing learning. So the document I'm telling you about gives us some strategies that we can use. They talk about jigsaw activity where learners analyze a large amount of content, and then in a short time, they try to foster collaboration and peer learning through getting students to sit in the circle, and then the people in the middle will be doing the activity, and then the others in the outer circle will be kind of doing their noticing about what went well, what went wrong. They would be observers, and there are plenty of strategies that you can use. And in fact, the document is not specific to one activity. It proposes a model, and then it also proposes which areas, as you can see, I hope you can see the blue dot, this is focusing on. So this activity, it says, and as you saw, I'm going to go back for a second. You see how many, there are 1, 2, 3, so 7 ideas proposed in the self-regulation. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 proposals for flexibility. There are strategies, but you can come up with your own, or maybe you have already been using a specific strategy, which in your mind, you didn't call it a strategy, but it is what it is. So again, being more explicit and knowing what you are doing in the classroom can, increase the power of your teaching by tenfolds. So that is really important. So it suggests that this activity, the jigsaw activity, is going to foster communication, collaboration, and all the learning to learn areas, because depending on which group you are in, etc., you're going to be noticing things about learning. As I said, I put a picture of a deck of cards here. I won't go into the fishbowl because I'm afraid we'll be running out of time. The deck of cards, which is the strategies, the document kind of mentions that whatever lesson you might be teaching, what is so amazing about this framework is that you could be able to select the competencies that you want to work for, even casually, and implement it to your lesson. And the life competencies and the life skills will be automatically included by using these strategies inside of your regular class teachings. But the deck of cards has not been developed yet, and I am in contact with the developers, and they have assured me that once it is available, they will send me a PDF of these cards, and I'll be happy to share if you're following me. So let's go to my experience. Primary, I'm currently working in this position, primary L2 English. So this is what I did to make it explicit. What did I do? I looked at this life competencies and life skills document, and then I decided to do a portfolio work. I told them, I set the scene, I told them the goals that we had for that day. We were working on mind maps, so how to construct a mind map based on a story that they have read. And I displayed this charts this chart that comes in steps. And I said, you are to write your name on a piece of paper, draw your concept map about your story. And then you can go walk around the classroom with your paper until it stops you. And then you're going to present your concept map to the partner and then listen to them. And then you're going to repeat this again from step 3, walk around the classroom again until I call it stop, and then you're going to do it again. So I'm giving them with this many turns at failing. And we know that we don't learn anything unless we fail several times. And with each interaction, they are actually listening to someone, they're getting relevant input, and then maybe they can also use that input or that language in their own context of telling about their story or their mind map. So what am I doing here? I've identified that I am using this strategy, which is think, write, pair, share. And this is an activity that allows learners to engage in meaningful dialogue with their peers, strengthening their communication competence, self-confidence, and motivation to participate in the learning. And even though here it's indicated that the focus is on flexibility, empathy, communication, and these areas, I found it to be even more so if I included this particular stage being asking questions, reflective questions at the end of the session. So after they had done all this and they still weren't aware, obviously, if they're doing what I've asked them to do and talking, they just have maybe fun, or maybe they deal with their anxieties of talking to a classmate in a foreign language, and whatnot. But then they're asking themselves, so I included this reflective stage. How did I do? Can I use a concept map to help? It's like a rubric, right? It's also a reflective practice. What could I have done better? How well did I do something? Can I use concept maps in other subjects? And I'm helping them get more out of this one lesson and specifically make connections with the other things in life, lifelong learning. And so to me, and I went into the descriptors. I created these descriptors from my experience with the students, and it went, the descriptors became a little different. So I said, if you're doing that, so it's fostering self-regulation. How? It's deepening their awareness of personal emotions. It's fostering flexibility. How? They have various attempts at a task by being open to novel ideas and ways of learning through taking action. It's promoting communication. How? They're expressing their ideas. They respect turn taking. They listen to others attentively, because it's not about just presenting, but it's a give and take. It's collaborations. It requires learners to work towards a common result. Listen carefully, learn from. So these are not included in the document. These are things that I then, since it's a conceptual framework, by doing one of these activities in that way, I realized that I was touching on more points than just those that were, referred to in the original document. So it's something that you can make better, improve, and make it more personal to your context. Last year, instead, I worked in the secondary L1.
Meri, sorry to disturb.
I'm sorry?
Meri, sorry to disturb. Your PPT is not present along that. Only your audio, your visual is there. No
Yes.
PPT is shared. Okay.
Can
Could
you
you
see
share
it?
your PPT? Yeah, we are not able to see the PPT. Okay.
Can you see it
Could
now?
you share? No.
Oh, so do I stop it and start again, maybe?
Yes, please. Okay. Yeah. Could you share your PPT? Yeah.
Okay. Was it, did you not see it from which slide? Can I ask? What was the last slide that you were able to see?
It's with the primary, the first one, and after
Okay.
which it is not.
Okay, let me try to present it again.
Yeah. Okay. Got the messages from participants. It's clearly visible. They got the message. Okay. We are able to see that. Okay. That's what the message has come from. Yeah. Please continue your presentation, please.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
No.
Mary, could you share it once again?
Yeah,
PPT?
I'll try because I was doing it
Yes.
just so I
Okay.
don't
Now
know.
it's fine.
Can
Now
you
it is
see?
coming. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes, I'll wait for it to load.
Sorry for the interruption. Okay.
No problem. Yes, I see it coming out, coming on now as well. I hope you didn't lose the other slides because they were quite.
No, we have not lost. Okay. Please continue.
Okay. So I was going into the secondary part. So when I was in the secondary cycle, I was an L1 English teacher, and then we were studying, literature masterpieces such as Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde by Stevenson, and we're doing Oscar Wilde and all these things. And to make it more personal and try to implement what the document suggests on, trying to implement life skills and teach students about those, we looked into collaborative tasks. We thought about group presentations, paraphrasing of passages, writing in the style of, continuing a given paragraph in a specific book or a short story, or inventing an omitted chapter from the book. So these are all aspects that are very good for encouraging students to collaborate more, to be more communicative with their work, to be more observant, to have that manage their learning through reflective practice and from looking at a given model and making it better, let's put it this way, or try to notice how they could reach a similar, linguistic production. So obviously, in order to do that, I had to go through what is plagiarism and the importance for citing sources. And then I gave them each a different aspect of the book to analyze instead of looking at just one big theme for it. So I gave each of the students a popular theme from these books, and I asked them to develop one of these exercises, we can call. And what I got from them was, examples of their works was that they did much better than I could. We're used to the teacher teaching and the students being, passive learners, active, yes, because they're listening, but passive as in they're not producing the knowledge themselves. And in the current era that we live in, all this information is easily retrievable really anywhere from a little quick search on anything. So what I asked them was to create these materials, and then they went into the aesthetic movement, and then they found sources for who is Walter Pater, William Morris, Gabriel Rossetti, and they came up with excellent bibliography and points for not plagiarizing any given thing. And I asked them to present it in front of the class, trying to making it a clear objective, not to be reading out their entire presentation, but trying to retrieve the information that really made an impact on them and comment only on the relevant things that they had learned. And it made for a great class discussion, and each of the groups, sometimes individually or sometimes in group, they presented this very, very well because they honed in so deeply on each of these topics that they did a far better job than I could have by dedicating class time into just presenting as a teacher. And then the peer collaboration was also very high here because they would ask each other questions, and I was just the moderator in the sessions, and it did wonders. I also told them to gather this information in terms of putting it on a Padlet. Like if I go back a slide here, they had to write in the style of, or choose a given chapter, or say why they preferred a specific chapter. I made it digital, and I asked them to upload it on a Padlet, and their only guide was to read one of those comments that, a long comment or the long written production that one of their classmates had done or had written, and then comment on one. And what happened was, obviously, if you need to comment on one and like one and then write one of your own, what happened was that many of them read more than one and learned more about the author or the book or the specific chapter. And that way they could also digitally see in one virtual space all the other students' productions, and kind of evaluate or compare themselves to, how they were writing and how other students were writing. And that raised the standard to a very high level. I'm a very picky teacher when it comes to anything written and that I have to evaluate and then look at, because I'm very aware that, with AI and with other things, it has become very difficult to make sure that, everything that the students create or come up with or make is something that they have themselves created. But I do frequent, we know our students. If you are teachers, you know that what your students are capable of. So you know who to look out for, what to prioritize. But I also, from time to time, I copy and paste. I insert some things, quote unquote, on Google, and then I find if this, a specific sentence has been used otherwise. And when it's so, and it's a case of plagiarism, I do let the student know, and I do make it very clear to them that, for now, maybe in a school setting, you might get a disciplinary, you might get a bad grade, you might get a slap in the hand, but you really need to make them aware that these type of things are very incorrect, especially for written production, and that it is not something that you're going to allow in any of your lessons in order for this to work in any positive way. Because I understand that going digital sometimes, and not just testing our students, has its pros and cons, and those are, the barriers and that we didn't really discuss so much. But I really wanted to make this clear, that we need to look at, the pros and cons for each of these activities that we propose in our classrooms. So bringing my presentation to the end right now, I want to thank you for listening. You can find me as the non-native speaker. I'm an equity advocate for non-native English speakers or teachers of English. And currently I'm, as the moderator had introduced, I am holding sessions with ELT experts and public figures talking about the problem that there is in the world. Really, it's something that also in Europe, even when we have laws against discrimination for language, gender, race, and all these things, unfortunately sometimes our accents or our backgrounds get questioned, and this is a very hurtful thing, and it's very detrimental to English language teachers in the world. So if you're interested in looking at the upcoming live events that are going to be held, the next one is on the 9th of June with Sarah Omar, a CELTA qualified teacher from Egypt, and we're going to talk about discriminatory practices also there, the legal aspects of things, and you can become a member and help perpetuate and deliver this message to more and more people. And with that, you get once in a month, you can participate in live memberships. As a member, you can participate in live events once a month. and have the library of events that have already been hosted live and have been recorded and are currently available with these 9 people you see and you might already know from the English language teaching world, and some of them are public figures, and this is still going on. So please follow, whether on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and support if you do believe in the cause as well, that teachers should be judged on their qualifications, not on their places of birth or their accent or their color. And that is everything I had to say for today's session. I hope I didn't go over time.
No, okay, it's absolutely fine.
Yes.
It's indeed a very great presentation, Mary, and we are so much elated to get focused on the areas the teachers of English should highlight, especially in order to develop the competencies of their learners in today's classroom. And when you have spoken about the learning to learn area connected with growth mindset, critical thinking, managing their learning process, and introducing them different types of activities such as jigsaw, puzzle, fishbowl, and then at the secondary level, the highlight is connected with the collaborative tasks, group presentations, paraphrasing, writing in style, and continuing in the given paragraph, etc. So thank you so much for highlighting various aspects in developing the competencies, especially of the learners in an ESL context. So now there are few questions which are raised by participants for the session today. And first one is by Ms. Rukmani Jamthar. Which would be the right age group to introduce and teach life skills for the students?
As I was saying before, every age is appropriate. It depends on, as a teacher, how you grade your task and make it achievable for them, because you start collaborating as soon as you are inserted into any type of social group. Whether you go to a kindergarten, you are already learning how to socialize, collaborate, listen to, whether it's your peers, to the teacher. So generally, if we're talking about life skills, I'm thinking about these 9 areas now. I'm thinking about personal development and empathy. I'm thinking about teaching them habits that are going to be implemented in their lives for lifelong learning. So it starts as soon as they're able. I would say, well, it starts at home almost, and then when we see them in our classrooms and we notice that some of them are lacking in this, lacking not because linguistically they are deficient or lesser than, but lacking because they have to be explicitly introduced to the concept even of turn taking or respecting the other person's view of things. We're already teaching that because they're learning a sort of an etiquette of how they should be communicating, especially with their peers in the classroom, being respectful with each other's ideas and never in contrast one to one another. They're still, they can disagree, they can agree, that is totally fine, but how do they go about it is what's most important.
Okay, fine. Fabulous point. Okay. Another question from Nagendra Hauji. What is your opinion about these days the institutions run life skills program just for the sake of documentation for accreditation agencies to score over other institutions in this case? And what is your point in this case?
I agree. Sometimes it's so governmental practice, institutional practice sometimes does not relate very much, with, because it's become, it is an industry. Teaching is an industry, ELT is an industry, and as such, we have been, led astray by so much paperwork, so many formal documentation, and sometimes these are not seen as related to our students' lives. However, we can make the most of it. I see, for instance, in my own setting that, yes, whether we talk about it, and normally teachers also come at it with the stance of, I already do this, I don't need to be learning anything new, and it's just a given. It automatically inserts itself because I'm a great teacher, and all my students are great as well. And I work in the primary cycle and have, I see mixed groups from the French and Italian section together. And they're not all French and Italian, they're simply in the section. So it's a multicultural and international school. So you find they're divided into sections as per their proficiency in a language. But then I feel that we really, whether or not this documentation has been made for officials or institutions, if we do take them and implement them in the classroom, we do see the benefits, but it doesn't have to stay on paper. And when you find these multi-ethnical, multicultural, plurilingual students, you really have to, yes, implement a framework, but you can make it yours as a teacher with your values. You can adapt it to your students, the ones that the ones you see in the class. I'll make an example because I think that this is a very good question. Accents, and this is related to also my field of being an equity advocate. If I am teaching L2 in a class of French and Italian students who are not only French and Italian, again, I want to highlight that, I'm going to be teaching them about how to communicate and how to not be judgmental of different accents. Okay, and in that I'm highlighting that in order to be effective communicators, they have to first be listeners, and they have to open their minds to the variety of accents they're going to listen, and not be biased about how another person speaks, rather be more focused in the message. So you can start that as soon as people laugh about an accent. For instance, when I play an accent that is not the specific English pronunciation, received pronunciation that we hear, I get giggles still, but that is not going to stop me from implementing that and say, hey, let's think about it, like showing them a world map. How many accents do you think English has? How many? So by posing questions, by introducing reflective practice, by making it real to them, you're actually working on life skills. But when you know how to define them and you know what area it is that you're working on, you can better stimulate them into thinking not necessarily the right thing, but questioning themselves about this aspect. Because there's still going to be students who are going to giggle at the next lesson for a different accent that they might not have been exposed to. But chances are that maybe 10% or 20% would have understood that an accent is not something that people should be judged on.
Okay,
so
fabulous. Yeah, okay.
My answers are very long, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. It's very relevant in this context. Okay. And there is one more. There is another question from Karupu Damodar, that national education policy, I believe that you might have heard it, of 2020 of India, gives importance to how to think, not what to think. So what are your strategies to inculcate this important life skill?
So how to teach, which is more important than what to teach?
Yeah. Yes, of course.
Wow. I believe, and again, this is going to go into what I very much believe. I was specifically hired as a language teacher without holding any credentials, so no one was interested as how I was going to teach when I was first hired as a second language teacher. And I was hired based on sounding that I was native and I was a competent teacher. So I totally believe 100% that anyone in the classroom should already know how to teach. And even though I was privileged enough to be introduced into the world of education and English language teaching in particular, I don't agree with how certain recruiters hire personnel without them being able or knowing how to teach. I think it should be a given that if you introduce someone within a classroom, they already should know how to teach. So then my second attention then would go to what are they teaching? So I kind of feel that it should be implied that teachers should know how to teach. And then what to teach, they can lesson plan on, and they can make their lessons perfect or as suitable as they can get. Perfect is the wrong word. As suitable as they can be for a given classroom and a given age group and a given. So how to teach to me is something that should be implicit, and it should never be that an unqualified teacher goes inside a classroom to teach.
Okay, yeah, fine. Okay, excellent. And well, there is another question from Kiran Sharma. That how would you foster mind mapping technique in the classroom?
By what I was saying in the introduction, so you go through the process of what is a mind map, how they are created, maybe show different models of mind maps, because there isn't just one or two or three. It can be totally improvised. With the primary, for instance, they really liked lab books, which are a kind of a variation of a mind map where you have certain, you categorize things, you put them, but we know that the individual mind works in so many different ways. You cannot force a person to think of one type of mind map. I myself was I wrote all my, let's say, summaries of works and things in a prose format. And it was harder for me to make it into a map. It was more like a bullet point for myself. I never found that the mind map, as in drawing, or there's a lot of excellent, icon representation and facilitation in mind mapping through images and icons. But the short answer to this would be to provide as many useful and a variety of mind maps that children can view, and maybe get them to make 3, 4, 5 different types and see which one works better for them. So they're actively working towards something that then later, through presentation or to whatever work they are doing, they can retrieve their own information quickly and to abide by their own standards, not to try to mimic or copy a mind map that is not useful to them. So they can you can plan like a 3-lesson far away from each other, so it doesn't get confusing, where you focus on one style, another style, and then get to a reflective process where you say, which mind map did you prefer and why, and get them thinking about if it worked and it was beneficial for them.
Okay, yeah, fine. The last question for this session is this. How do you encourage, there is a question from Rukmani Jamdar. How do we encourage slow learners to participate in the classroom discussions?
That's a good question.
Yeah, really.
Define a slow learner. I have always mixed levels in each of the classes, and sometimes it depends. I don't like to some teachers put students on the spot, or maybe even if something is incomplete, they get them to participate even though the product, the end product is not complete. I would even allow for more time for slower learners, because if it takes more time to create something, to finish a presentation, and your situation allows for a bit of flexibility in the delivery of it, because I don't, as a student who had changed a lot of school context, struggling with many languages and many different environments, it wasn't sometimes that I was slow, it was sometimes that I needed more time to elaborate and come up with something. So if you have the opportunity to give or even anticipate something that you're going to do with your quote unquote slow learner, then might give them the advantage of doing something. You adapt your teaching materials. You can give them the extra handout that some of the things will be already done. If I know that a mind map is going to be hard for a specific learner, I'm going to create already a template or a sample that I will give to them. And that way they would only need to maybe label the different parts, but they won't need to draw out the whole table themselves. So things, if you have time, again, teachers are, I as a teacher, I know you're asked to cater to all your students. And if you have a group of 26 students, it gets harder and harder to be so specific and, create things for each of those learners. But keep in mind that it just might be, sometimes it's their nature to do things slowly, and it's not correct to make them feel inadequate in a school setting, no? Keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, at the time, when you think of that, the slow learner, probably the person who is not much comfortable in a kind of a setting where he might be quite comfortable at a home environment, and where his own learning could be better. And sometimes when he is being involved with a peer group and that learning doesn't take place as expected because of his observation may be quite slower in this case. How do you encourage them at that moment when somebody doesn't even open the mouth to communicate as expected? What strategies would you employ to encourage them? Yeah.
So that I'm sorry, I want to clarify. So so that they produce the same thing in the classroom without taking into account what they might do at home.
Yes, of course. Yeah, that's true.
Well, again, if you find yourself in a classroom where they can have a peer work with them, but what normally happens is that the fast or the high achievers complete everything and they're done, and they exclude the other person from. This is where life skills are so important, because then before even setting the task, you're going to say, I am going to evaluate collaboration. I'm going to evaluate this specific thing and you are then teaching them that you are not only looking at the end result, the presentation being ready, but you are going to give points to the group that has been inclusive, or the entire group, that each of the members have contributed in a way and then helped each other. And that is going to be your first priority. And that way you are promoting life skills within that lesson, and they know before even they start that in order to get that grade, even if you're the highest achiever, you're not going to get a 10 out of 10 if you don't collaborate. So it is forcing the hand but sometimes we need to do that, especially again in a mixed group of students from different classes. They never want to work with people who are not from their classroom, who they don't share another language with. So it's really important to establish, build that relationship. Also, you can do some, before doing a certain task like that, you can build rapport, do some team building games with them so that they're more prone to interact and help each other out. And if you're lucky, you have some people in the classroom sometimes who are very, very good helpers. If you have one of those, you can always, strategically place them with a slow learner and help them process it, but not, it has to be the right person. It has to be the right person.
Okay. Well, thank you, Meri, for for making this session wonderful. And back to, I do invite the host to communicate information further. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Over to Sushila.
Thank you so much, Dr. Sankarakumar and Meri Maroutian. That was an insightful question-answer session. Thanks to the participants, moderator, and the resource person. Before ending the session, let me quickly inform you about the next webinar, an international conference planned by ELTAI. ELTAI has organized the 111th webinar entitled Writer's Voice Through Ethos, Structure, and Granularity in Creative Writing on 25th June 2023 at 4:30 p.m. The resource person for the next webinar is Dr. Stavros Halvadzis, Subject Manager for Screenwriting and Creative Writing, Open Window Institute College in Pretoria, South Africa. The next conference, that is the 17th International and 53rd Annual Conference of ELTAI, will be on Indian English language teaching, and it will be entitled English for Global Citizenship, Multiple Teaching Acts and Learning Experiences from 11th to 14th October 2023, and it will be hosted by Uttaranchal University, Dehradun, Uttarakhand, India. We are confident that English language teachers at all levels will participate in large numbers in the webinar and the conference. Thank you to our resource person, Meri Maroutian, moderator, Dr. Sankarakumar sir, all the organizers and all the delegates who participated in this webinar. See you online during our 111th webinar on 25th June. Goodbye, one and all.
Thank you, Sushila ma'am, and thank you, Mary, for having accepted our invitation to be the resource person.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. And I'm still reading the comments. They're wonderful. Thank you so much for all the compliments. I hope that I gave you a bit more. I don't claim to be an expert on this. I've just read the documents and interpreted it to, my best beliefs and put it into practice. And I'm still implementing this in the classroom to this day. So hopefully you'll take this as, ideas and insightful things that you might also adapt. And I encourage you to look at life skills as something that can be beneficial to yourself and your students, because I find it quite valuable.
Thank you. Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you so much. We'll end the session. Yes. Thank you, ma'am.